Operator Syndrome, episode 37. Um, Last time we did a listener Q&A. I think we're going back to, and as we'll do a better job of plugging it, if you've got other questions, comments, gripes, concerns, Operator Syndrome podcast at gmail.com. Today we're jumping back into Steve's timeline. Um, Generally, not exactly. So the last episode on you, we were talking about your third deployment to the Philippines, but this seemed like a good time to jump into your sniper training, which is something people are always interested in knowing. Just snipers in general. There's a lot of prestige and lore around snipers. So we'll dedicate this episode here talking about your experience as a sniper. So maybe the best place to start is um, how does one get selected or identified to fill that duty within a platoon? Maybe how about do new guys get to be snipers, or do you got to have a little salt on you first?
Well, sometimes it works both ways. A lot of times in my first platoon, which was Charlie platoon, that was the one we went to the Philippines for the first time, the coup d'état, all that stuff.
Mhm.
They had a primary sniper, and usually each platoon has what you call a primary sniper and a secondary sniper. The secondary sniper usually serves as what's called a spotter for the primary sniper. And that's an important role on a sniper op. It's usually a two-man operation, sometimes not, sometimes more. There's a little variance, but a traditional sniper operation is two-man, a sniper, your main shooter, and a spotter. And a spotter is somebody who just looks through what's called a spotting telescope and can kind of see the broader picture and see, okay, you've got a vehicle approaching your target, you've got watch out for this over here. And so they can kind of walk the sniper into whatever's going on downrange. So I was in my first platoon, and we had Mike, one of the mics. We had like four mics in that same platoon, but this one particular Mike Bay, took me under his wing. Kind of, we kind of hit it off. I was a new guy, so there's always a little bit of prickliness with the salty guys, but he really liked me. I liked him, and he was a phenomenal shot. He was also, his hobby was he was a full blown gunsmith. He worked with a guy named Armin Swinson and could build a custom 45. I mean, he was really knowledgeable about weapons and a phenomenal shot. And so it's funny how things happen sometimes just so unsystematically. In my platoon, I turned out to be a decent shot. Like I was, Mike and I were the two top shots in the platoon, and we saw this because we were always on the range comparing and seeing who could shoot what, and with long guns and with pistols and with submachine guns and stuff like that. So one day, there was this over on the main Navy base across called 32nd Street in San Diego, which is, oh, it's just a big, that's the fleet. We're over on the amphib base in Coronado, and they had this fleet marksmanship week where it was just a big shooting match, right? And it wasn't that prestigious, but it's a hooyah. Like, so the ships would send, like, many times their security guys, their shore patrol dudes would show up. And it was a contest. So Mike was looking for somebody to go with him because they were like two-man teams from different commands. He goes, "Hey, you want to go to the fifth fleet, the whatever fleet shooting thing it was? I can't remember
Mhm.
what it was." I was like, "Yeah, I'll go." And it was just a hooyah. I don't even know. It might have been on a Saturday or something. It was like, yeah, he goes, "Hey, we'll just grab a 45 and let's go." And we had some tricked out 45s. Nowadays they're all tricked out anymore, but back then, military issue 45s were pieces of crap. They wouldn't shoot good. They weren't reliable. All this. So we grabbed some decent pistols, and it was a pistol competition. There were no long guns or shotguns, and headed over there. And oh, there was one other guy. No, it was a three-man team. That's right. Bill Schmick was with us. He worked in the armory. So we were all SEALs. I wasn't fully qualified yet. I didn't have my trident yet, but I was working on it. And we went over, and we just we beat everybody. We took first place, and And there was even some griping among some of the sailors. They're like, they shouldn't let SEALs compete in this. And we're like, well, why not? It's a Navy event. I mean, any command is welcome to send anybody. And so that was funny, but I had a really good day of shooting. Some days you're just really on, and other days you're pretty on. And I mean, I remember Schmeck and Bay came over and they looked at my target, and it was like we were shooting, I think it was 25 yards at a standard kind of target. It wasn't that nothing tricky. And I had my I think we shot 3 rounds each, and my first and second round were like, it was just like one ragged hole right in the X. I mean, it was just like shredded. I mean, it the guns were really dialed in, and then I kind of felt sorry for some of the Navy guys because I was looking at some of what they were using, or military issue stuff,
Mm-hmm.
and it was like,
Well,
that is,
competition can do that to you too. Like you can just get in the zone,
yeah.
right?
And you can get out of the zone. Sometimes the pressure
True.
gets to you, and you shake more than if you're just out with your buddies, having a beer. Not too
Right.
many beers, hopefully, on a shooting range, but you know, anyway. So yeah, so they were like, that's damn good shooting, Watkins. And so I remember on the ride back, Mike said, we need a secondary sniper, and we'll put you through our in-house sniper course. If you'd be interested, we'll put it. It had to go through our platoon commander, but I think Mike's recommendation carried a lot of weight. And so really it was kind of informal. And I think it was one of our platoon musters, the platoon commander, Steve Simmet, just said, hey, uh, Watkins is interested in being our secondary sniper. Is there anybody else who wants to compete for that position? And what he meant was, if anybody else wanted to, because I was new, I didn't have any salt yet, first platoon. What they would have sent us to the shooting range with probably bolt actions, and shot at maybe 600-yard targets to see who, and the most accurate person would get it. It was just that simple, really, back then, the way we did it. So nobody else, I think, wanted to. I was already I mean, I had won some shooting competitions. We'd been to some schools, like civilian shooting schools, Mid-South Institute of Self-Defense Shooting, um, one of those cool guys schools. And I beat everybody in the platoon. That was with an MP5 on a timed course and everything else. So I think there was like, I don't know if they just didn't want to bother with the competition, or they didn't really want to be a sniper, because it's a lot of work. I mean, it's yeah, as Patrick said, it's kind of cool. A sniper. There's this kind of mystique about the deadly snipers, and there's just some truth to that. But it's also hard work, especially the schools you go through to become a sniper. So that's how it happened. They just said, it's
You
okay, you got it.
so you showed predisposition to that, to those skills, and then the platoon recognized that. And hey, if you're in the platoon, you're like, that guy can shoot. All
Yeah.
right, yeah, we'd like someone who can shoot to be a
Yeah.
sniper. That could be advantageous. Go ahead and let him do it. So you
Right.
mentioned in-house sniper course. Was this platoon team specific? Was it a were there West Coast, East Coast versions? What did that look like?
Okay, this is way back in the dark ages,
Back,
and
yep, yep.
yeah, yeah. Now they have I went to it. It's at Crane, Indiana, at a joint base there. A full blown SEAL sniper course. It's just
Okay.
come light years. But no, back then, there were 2 snipers in training department. I mean, fully qualified. I think one of them had been to SOTIC. But they were legit, and they put us through an in-house. I think there were 4 of us in the training group. I was from Charlie, and I can't remember the other platoons, but there were some newer guys and maybe a little bit older guys. There were 4 of us going through an in-house sniper course, so they did it all, as to the best of their ability. Now, it was nothing like SOTIC, which is kind of where I'm going, but I did get qualified, at least on the platoon level, to be, and I was going to serve as the spotter for Mike, but I could
Mhm.
also shoot. I knew how to do the mechanics of being a sniper, adjust for windage and elevation, and um, become proficient with the platforms we had. And even then, we were starting to get into the 50 caliber. But for SEALs as a whole, we had what we called medium range sniper rifles, which were 308s, Winchester bolt action 308s. What is it? Model 700, I think. I think it is. Yeah, 700.
Remington, what?
Remington 700.
Remington
Yeah,
700, right? Yeah.
right. Which the Winchester's Model 70. So anyway, I prefer Winchesters, but we had the military had a contract with Remington. That's right. And then our medium range sniper rifle was a 300 Winchester Magnum. I think on the same platform, it was Remington 700. And then we had the first, we had I think it was called the Haskins 50 caliber. Now, since then, things have gone another direction. No, no, it was a Macmillan. That's right. The Macmillan bolt action 50 caliber. And we hadn't had a lot of applications for those yet. They used them. I heard that the SEALs used them in Beirut in 1980 when the Marine barracks was bombed. Um, they had I don't know how much of this is lore. I do know it was legit. I mean, they killed some Palestinian terrorists who were taking pot shots at our Marines over this brick wall thing, like a wall, a little fortress, kind of a barrier wall, and they were just popping up and spraying, spraying and praying with AKs. And I think maybe one or two Marines got hurt. Now the bombing, that's a whole different thing, but
Mm-hmm.
can't remember. I think this was before the bombing because after that we pulled out, and there was a Marine Amphibious Ready Group. So there's always what's called a MARG platoon, a SEAL platoon that's on a MARG, that's on a ship out with another group of amphibious carriers, mostly Marine landing forces, to support that. If and there's a ARG, an amphibious ready group in the Pacific, and a MARG in the Mediterranean. So we always have those out there ready to land and get if something gets serious. They sent some SEALs in, and they decided that the snipers could probably take care of these guys doing this pot shotting stuff. So they used 50s. They used the Macmillan 50 with what's called a Mark 211 Rothus round. Big old, well, 50 counts rounds are always big, but this is a French made round that had in the tip of the bullet, there was a shape charge with a tungsten steel penetrator inside. And a tungsten steel is like about as hard as anything other than depleted uranium, and it can penetrate a lot. I mean, mostly it's for light armor and stuff like that. And they just set up on this area where they were having trouble, where these guys are taking pot shots. And sure enough, they did it. They shot over the wall, and then they shot right through the wall, like, and got them like through the brick, like kind of in the movies, kind of thing.
I was just about to say I am
Yeah,
99% sure the movie Navy SEALs has that. The optic game is goofy, but
yeah.
I feel like I saw a similar thing there, perhaps inspiration
I
for yeah.
I think that's right. The guy I met him, who produced that movie, was a dev group operator, and for all I know, he might have been on the team that did that. I don't know, but yeah, it was pretty cool. It wasn't near as Hollywood is just, oh, got nothing on Starlight, switching to thermal, all that goofiness that movie was. That
It,
movie really makes me sad, but anyway,
it inspired a lot. We can't take too much away from it.
that's right.
So you're in the in-house the team. It sounds like the team sort of centric in-house
Mhm.
school you went to course you went to you worked through the inventory of what you had available to you. Was it primarily focused on just the marksmanship aspect, or did you get into the things everyone knows, right? The
Yeah,
stalks and the
stalks.
observation. Was it that as well?
Yeah, we did it. We did both.
Okay.
Not as extensive, neither as extensively as SOTIC, but SOTIC, and that's kind of where we're going. That is the top. That is the category one. They called it at that time sniper course in the Army. I mean, so if you graduated, you were not only a category one sniper, you could teach at Army sniper courses. It was the credential to be a sniper instructor. So they told us all when we graduated, and not everybody made it. They were like, "You always have an invitation back here, even you Navy SEALs, you goofballs." And so we were like, "Hey, that felt pretty good." I mean, I never knew of anybody going back there, but yeah. So that was the highest level. So everything is like kind of intensified when you go to that school.
Is that had you gone to and I've heard of SEALs going to the Army Sniper School or the Marine Corps Sniper
Hmm,
School.
that's right.
Were any of those opportunities available to you all back then, or yeah?
Yeah, yeah. Several snipers I knew. I kind of got lucky to go to SOTIC. There were other sniper schools, not to take anything away from the other sniper schools.
Mhm.
The guys went to the Marine Force Recon Sniper School. I believe it was Force Recon run. But it was the Marine Sniper Course, which is prestigious. It is.
Right.
I mean, their legend is Gunny Hathcock in Vietnam, who got some incredible, like 100 and some confirmed kills or whatever, if you even
Mhm.
go there these days. And then the Army did have another one step down from SOTIC sniper course. I think they had a couple of them across the country. So some SEALs went to those too. I just got lucky. I was in Foxtrot platoon. It was in 1990, spring of 1990. You know, the Gulf War is going to kick off in August of 90.
Mhm.
And Lieutenant Tom Dietz, called me in. And at that point, so this is a new platoon, different from Charlie when I first got my basic kind of creds as a sniper. And I was working on needing a spotter slash secondary sniper, because by default I was the only one qualified, so I became the primary sniper in that platoon. And my friend Bruce, who I've talked about before, was a really good shot, and he thought it was cool and all that. And so I kind of did what Mike Bay did, although Bruce was my same level and rank. I would They always listen to the primary sniper as far as who do you think has the aptitude, and do you want to nail it? Do you want to kind of limit it down to 2 or 3 guys, or do you want to just hand select one? And I kind of hand selected Bruce. I think is the way it went, and I said, yeah, I think we'd be good together, get along. But we would like to go to a more formal school, and so we all call him Tommy. Tommy just said, all right, well, I'm going to look around and I'll go to training and see if we can get orders. And sure enough, he comes back, he goes, hey, you guys got lucky. You're going to SOTIC at Fort Bragg. And we were like, damn, I mean, we would have gone anywhere and been happy, but we were like, shoo. And so then the platoon was getting ready to do mountain warfare out in Helena, Montana. And Bruce and I had to get ready because this was no joke. I mean, none of the sniper schools are a joke in that sense, but we had to really, really work, and we spent a lot of time shooting, and we spent a lot of time talking after hours at my apartment or his apartment. And because I was a rigger and I could sew, one of the things we had to do is build a ghillie suit. Back in those days, you had to make your own, really, and now you can buy them online and stuff. But we took we really took pride in making those things great, putting reinforced pads in the where you can crawl, and just outfitting them to be really good. And we had 2 really good ghillie suits. I think I sold my ghillie suits for like $500 or $600 when I got out of the military, because
Nice.
it was decent. I mean, it's lots of hours in that thing. So that was it. We packed up and headed out to Fort Bragg with orders. SOTIC is an acronym for Special Operations Target Interdiction Course. So if you leave it to the military to obfuscate the obvious, it's a sniper course, right? That's all it is, but you got to say it fancy or something. There is and I don't know, I'm just looking at the time. This may turn into 2 episodes. There's a lot to say about the school itself that was really crazy, but there's always this dark side about snipers in military philosophy. They don't Back then they didn't even send officers to sniper school, and traditionally officers do not serve as snipers. Part of that is, well, it's this idea of the officer and a gentleman. Like,
Right.
a sniper is kind of a dirty, kind of a dark, sinister, you're going to shoot a guy in the head, poor guy doesn't even have a chance, or whatever. That could get me off on tangents. It's like, well, I always say, if I have to be shot and know I'm going to be shot on the battlefield, I would rather have a sniper shoot me than anybody, because it's going to be over quick. Because I'm not going to bleed out and have a second chest wound for hours on end. I
Yeah.
want it to be over, right? So to me, it's more humane to have accurate marksmanship rather than, you get into all these weird ethical debates.
Right.
But anyhow, so they didn't send officers. And now I talked to somebody and they said, well, sometimes they'll send an officer, but it's just for the knowledge of how to apply a sniper. It's not because
Sure.
they're not going to deploy an officer as a sniper. So, yeah, so we headed out. to SOTIC, and my first time to Fort Bragg, and it was part of the John F. Kennedy Special Warfare Center. They ran this school, and SOFARTEC. They were both under the same kind of orb. They had two different cadres, but they were a part of the same place.
Was this before, or because you would go on to, or you did Sephardic? Did you do Sephardic before or after SOTIC?
After SOTIC.
Okay, interesting.
Yeah.
All right.
After SOTIC, yeah. So we arrived, and kind of a similar story about the clash between the Navy and the Army. Here we are, Bruce and I, suntanned, and they're looking at us like, where'd these jokers come from? And man, Bruce was a little more sassy than I was. I just want to lay low. I was always kind of, my philosophy is like, man, these guys are here to teach us something. I don't want to make any enemies if I don't need to. And to be honest, we made a lot of friends with a lot of these Green Berets. They just were a fun group of guys. It's funny, we had Rangers there. We had, I think, 4 at least Rangers at SOTIC, and they were, for whatever reason, I remember this one guy. I don't remember his name, but I really liked him, and I talked to him a lot. But the Rangers were kind of more standoffish a little bit, not in a snobby way, but in a, we know our lines and we don't want to meddle outside our boxes. And they were always together, and they were always like super squared away. Their rucksacks. That's where I was like, the first time I was like, now that is a good looking rucksack. They had them all dressed out, and
If I take one thing away from SOTIC, the Rangers know how to pack a ruck.
Oh, and they were great. They were hard chargers and everything. I mean, great shots, the whole 9 yards. But I guess the first big trauma after we got there is we did a PT test, of course. All right, so that was really non-eventful. It just run bishops, pull-ups, all that. And but the thing that was really stressful is they took us on a deuce and a half over to a range, and we didn't know where we were going. It was kind of, I think the instructors wanted to make it kind of mysterious, kind of keep you on your edge a little bit. And we had heard that we were going to have a pretty rigorous first pass or fail test to continue on with rifles. And we knew we were going to be shooting bolt actions, and we knew it was going to be iron sights, no scopes.
Interesting.
So we had prepared for that. Yeah, Bruce and I went out, we got some bolt actions, took the scopes off, put iron sights on, went to the range, and did a lot of really as tedious shooting as we could have to get real comfortable. And thankfully, we had a Remington 700 system we were shooting, and that's what the Army was using as well. So that's helpful. It's not always a good thing to go from one system to another for trigger pull issues and the way they feel, everything. Because every little thing, I mean, we're talking about shooting so accurately that any little thing can throw you off. So they took us out there and they said, all right, if you pass this one, well, welcome to SOTIC. I'm like, wow, we're not even in the school yet, technically. And they put us on a range. It was, now this is it's going to sound weird. It was 25 yards. So that's not very far.
Right.
And you're shooting prone, from a prone position, laying down. But here's where it gets interesting. They put it was a man-sized silhouette, just a green silhouette target. And they put 6, those 1-inch by 1-inch black posts. They're adhesive, and they cover up bullet holes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
They put, you cover up like the center of a black target so you can use it longer. That's why they have these. They're 1 by 1, and they're like Post-it notes. You peel them off and just stick them on. On each target, they stuck 6 of these. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So top shoulders, mid torso, and then lower torso. It didn't have anything to do with the torso target. It just had to do with these 6 little post-it things, look, whatever they're called.
Yeah, they're like stickers.
Stickers, yeah.
Yeah.
And they're small. And so from 25 yards, that's not very far. But when you're looking at that little thing, I mean, from 25 yards with a rifle, it's you can barely see it.
And the silhouettes are, if they're the same thing I'm imagining, they're like OD, right?
They're green.
Yeah, so they're OD green, a black dot, 6 black dots on an OD green background.
Yeah, an OD green background. No optics, just iron sights. And so, I mean, I remembered we discussed this, Bruce and I did, before we got there. With an iron sight, the iron sight when you always want to focus on your front sight, not your rear. You want your front sight to be crystal clear focus and your rear sight to be blurry and the target to be a little blurry. Well, in this case, the target was so small, our front sight you couldn't even see the black post-it or the black patch that we're shooting at. The front sight covered it up because it was so much closer to our eye. I'm like, and they said, we're going to let you dry fire these things and sight them in however you want. And we're going to give you 3 rounds to sight it in. And they were pretty already sighted in. They weren't trying to screw with us, but it's like, man, depending on how you hold, it's just real tedious. So Bruce and I decided, we took one look at this. We're like, okay, let's go with what's called a popsicle hold, which is where the sight is here and the target is here. So you sight it into where your bullet's going to be hitting right at the center, because we couldn't see if we did a straight on shot, we couldn't see the post-it.
Mm-hmm.
We would lose left, right, up, down. We couldn't really see it. So we decided to sight them in where the top sight was right below it. And so if we sighted them in properly, we'd be punching them right through. But see how little room for error there is.
Right.
If one bullet goes outside of that, you're going home. And you got to shoot 6 groups of 3 rounds in each one. And if you throw one, see you later. Pack your bags.
Wild.
Now and we were pretty good shots. And we were, oh man, this would be really easy. Just if you were just off one little gnat's ass on pulling just perfectly. So I don't know how we did it. We got it. But there were about, if I can remember correctly, and man, oh, well, you could never hold me to this anyway, because they probably don't even have records of our school back then. I think there was about 8 guys who went home, man. They packed their bags. I can't remember who they were. And I do think we had about 3 or 4 Marines there. I guess they were recon guys or force recon guys. And then I say at least 4 Rangers, and then the rest were Special Forces, U.S. Army Special Forces, and then 2 SEALs. So I can't remember who went home. I know most, if not all, of the Rangers stayed. Bruce and I stayed. At least a few Marines stayed, and a lot of Special Forces guys stayed. And I think we had a class of about 25 or 30 total. So, man, that was a relief to get that one over with, because it was just, can you imagine? That was just really ridiculously hard.
Do you feel like you were at a disadvantage at all? It sounded like you had a vague idea of what was coming up, and I'm wondering because there are a lot of things in the military school wise where it's you get the benefit of institutional knowledge. You know,
Yeah,
like folks
yeah,
you talk to, like if you're going to, so I gotta imagine you and Bruce went up to the last guy to come back from SOTIC and was and
yeah,
we're like, hey, what should we be doing? How should
yeah.
we be prepping? What is this going to look like? And they're going to
Hmm.
give you as much as possible. Did you feel like the Army guys had any? I mean, you two stayed, and you know, if you look at the distribution of the class,
Yeah,
I mean, more. It sounds like perhaps maybe more Green Berets went, but statistically they were a bigger group anyways, right?
right, right.
But did you feel like there was any sort of advantage on the Army side, or do you feel like everyone was probably working off the same amount of uh, uh, knowledge passed down and through?
Yeah. I'm not 100% sure. I really feel like we probably all had about the same amount of knowledge. I think the only difference I would say where I felt a little bit more at a disadvantage was with respect to pressure, because we're 2 SEALs that everybody's looking at.
Mm, mhm.
And it's like, it's kind of not a big sensation when an Army guy goes home.
Right.
But with us, it was like a big deal if, oh, the 2 holier than thou SEALs go home. Wow.
Sure.
Makes headlines, right?
Sure.
So there was that pressure that was just internal, in addition to the pressure of not wanting to go back to a SEAL team and say, I didn't make it,
Yeah.
is really hard, man. And so that sometimes the mental pressure is way worse than even the knowledge. And then I also felt like, and I know I don't know. I don't know this to be true, but I really think the instructors were a little harder on us in some ways. I don't think they were unfair, but I think
Mhm.
they looked at every nook and cranny of what we were doing to say, if these guys are jacked up in any way, we're going to find out. And there was, so I felt like we had a little more pressure in that way. But as far as the knowledge goes, yeah, I picked the brains of all the SOTIC guys, and they told me pretty much what to expect.
Mhm.
The unknowns were that, yeah, they had done it 3 years ago, and they might have changed things here and
Right.
there. The test they remember, which was, it turned out to be the same test. That's why we were practicing with bolt actions already with iron sights,
Mhm.
but we didn't know what kind of, and you know how it is. The guys are like, can't remember if they let us shoot a group first or they just yeah, we're like, oh boy.
And you didn't. They didn't let you you only got to dry fire, correct?
No, they let us shoot 3 rounds as a sight
Okay.
in.
All right.
Yeah. And that's
Okay.
where we did that lollipop hold where
Yeah, okay.
like,
Yeah.
yeah, oh yeah. Because it would not be fair to just give you a weapon that's sighted in by somebody else and go, oh, good luck, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah,
So
exactly. But you only got to shoot one 3-round group before you.
I can't remember if it's 1 or 2 3 round
Let's
groups.
make this a tall tale. You got one shot. You got one cold bore shot
Yeah.
to that. I think that'll work out well for the story.
Yeah.
Um, okay, so so that gets you in. That
That
gets
gets
you
us
in.
in.
And what's the syllabus look like?
Yeah. So the syllabus, the first part of the course was half the day. I believe most of the time in the mornings, it was classroom work, like a lot of knowledge. And man, I learned, I mean, everything from how a scope system works, minutes of relief, elevation, how to adjust this way, that way for wind, for barometric pressure, for like we're talking really tedious time of shooting. And then also things like ballistic curves, trajectories of how bullets fly, a lot of ballistics, a lot of ballistic coefficients. What are those, and how do you get maximum this that? Like if you're going to shoot somebody through a glass, like let's say your target is behind a glass windshield, you're probably going to need to use something like a bronze round that has minimal deflection, not a typical ball round, because a bronze round has higher density, but yet it's not hard enough to where it'll rip the lands and grooves out of the barrel like tungsten steel and depleted uranium would. Of course, you if you shoot those, you shoot them with something called a slap or a sabot launched armor piercing. So they have something else wrapped around them that throws them through the rifle barrel and puts the spin on them because they're too hard. They're harder than the grooves of the barrel, and they will rip them out. They won't even spin. So
Mhm.
there's all these really tedious kinds of things they were teaching us, distances, and then in the afternoon it was range time, and that was they were just they were smoking us good with lots of tedious kind of shooting, the traditional offhand, kneeling, and prone shooting, and a lot of prone shooting. Most of the time, a sniper is going to most always try for a prone position because it's the most stable. Prone is when you're laying down and you have lots of points of contact and a lot of control. When you're standing shooting offhand, that's the least stable. And then kneeling is a little better than standing. But anyway, putting us through all of that on the range, we were shooting 200, 600, and 1,000 yards with 308s. So it gets interesting trying to hit a 1,000 yard target with a 308, but you can do it. Um, you don't have a whole lot of, I mean, the bullet is not going to be your best performer at that distance. You're going to go to a heavier caliber or a more powerful round if you're going to do that. But we did it at sniper school, including shooting iron sights at silhouettes at 1,000 yards. So now there you go. That was as hard as shooting those post-its. I mean, and that's why they're doing it. They're just driving into you muscle memory of sound marksmanship. That's really what it was. Now, the most challenging thing we did were called snaps and movers. Um, they had her on a range. You had to shoot, and this was still on the range. This is not in the field. I think the last month of the course, and I can't remember how exactly long it was. It was at least 2 months. I think longer, a little bit. The last month was in the field doing stalks and doing your final training or your field training exercises to see if you pass fail. But Snaps and movers were two different types of applications about targets that were either briefly presenting themselves or moving targets. And so in movers, for example, you would have targets, and at different ranges you had different speeds. So at the closest range you had what were called runners. So it's literally a guy behind, under the berm behind the target with a stick and a silhouette, and he's like almost jogging like this, and you've got to hit it. You've got to range. You start here and you end here, and you've got to hit it as it's moving, and hit it in a solid, like, torso kill. We call it kill hit. So at the closest range, I think 200, they were fast movers, and then at 400 they were what were called slow movers. They were still moving, but not as fast as the closest range. And the farthest range at 600, they were called walkers, and they were just literally walking. So it wasn't going real fast. But it was just as hard, I think, at each range because the speeds were different. So you're having to hit these things. And I don't remember how many you had to hit and how many was a pass fail, but it was all pass fail at that school. You could be giving your walking papers back to your command at any time if you really blew it, and they would probably retest. I don't remember retesting, but perhaps I did. I don't know. I can't remember. And then snaps are a similar thing. It was about fast acquisition, and so you'd have, here'd be the berm and a silhouette of a shoulder and a head and like top torso, like the target would be from here, shoulders and a head, and you either had to hit like right center mass or in a headshot, and you could choose whatever you wanted to do. Um, and so you'd be sitting there and you knew your area, and it would all of a sudden snap up, and you had like so many seconds to acquire it, fire, and kill before it snapped back down. And it was like I say, the same thing: 200, 400, and 600. You had They stayed less time at 200, a little longer at 300 or 400, and then a little bit longer at 600. But man, that made me sweat some bullets right there, because it was not easy to hit them, and you had to hit, like I say, I don't know how many out of how many, but that's kind of hard. It's kind of hard to do.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds incredible. I have a million I have a million questions. We may need to revisit we may
Yeah,
need to
yeah,
revisit
yeah.
because we haven't even talked about stocks or anything else.
Stop. That's the best
Uh,
part.
so we'll have to close this one out, but we'll put a pin in it. And yeah, one of the things I'm thinking immediately is one of the questions I have is how it might differ from, your conventional, why does this school even exist, right? So maybe that's where we open it up next time. Like, what is
Yeah,
it they're looking to teach you that the traditional Marine Corps or Army sniper schools don't teach, and
yeah.
then a million other things. So, okay, thanks for that. Thanks for listening, and we'll catch you all in the next one.